Well, we have a very special guest, and she made her way from the airport just in the nick of time. So we greet you and your husband. So Rabbi Dr. Laura Duhan-Kaplan. And I'm going to just share a little bit of her bio. She is the Rabbi Emerita of Or Shalom Synagogue in Vancouver. Who here has been to Vancouver? Look around. A lot of Vancouvers. I've been there. Beautiful. And Professor Emerita of Philosophy at UNC Charlotte. Anyone been to that school? Nope. She holds a BA in Philosophy from Brandeis University, PhD in Philosophy and Education from Claremont Graduate University, Rabbinic Ordination from Aleph, Graduate Diploma in Spiritual Direction from the Vancouver School of Theology. I think she's got you beat. You thought going to school for what, 10 years was, how many years?
Is that a joke?
For you.
I'm on 14 right now.
Okay, 14.
Yeah.
Slow learner. I mean, what are we going to do? All right. Rabbi Laura received many teaching awards, including the American Academy of Religion Katie Geneva Cannon Award for Excellence in Teaching, American Association of Philosophy Teachers Award, and this goes on a long way. So I think she knows her stuff. And she has written 10 books. So by the time she's done, you're going to buy them all. Rabbi, please, grace her bima. All right.
Thank you so much, everyone. My husband, Charles, and I are so delighted to be here with you this evening at Ner Tamid, and we're so excited that United Airlines finally got us to our destination. We loved the third of the service that we got to participate in. I think we walked in during the Shema. The music is so beautiful. The presence of the leaders and the group, the healing prayer, the love that poured out during the Kaddish. Everything is very beautiful. So thank you. Your Rabbi Sandy Akselrad asked me to speak about the topic, Judaism in 50 years. And I said, okay. So just a couple of caveats. I am not a futurist, although in the conversation that Rabbi and I will have later, I will give many more specifics than I'm going to give in this short talk. So my goal is not to get it right in the next 10 or 12 minutes, but just to give you some things to talk about, some things to think about. Some of them will be whimsical, and some of them will be serious. And if it lands terribly, please be patient with me because I'm meeting you all for the first time right this very minute. So, a few whimsical things overheard at Shabbat dinner about 8 years ago when our children were college students. They were and are very typical young Jewish Canadians of the Pacific Northwest. They may not be representative of all young Jewish adults across North America, but 3 of the 4 characters in this short little anecdote have many years of day school education and completed a year of learning and service in Israel. So here's the Shabbat dinner snippets. Our son, Eli, at that time a biology major, says, I've been thinking about sponges, the kind that live in the ocean, not the kind that live in the kitchen. What if sponges were food? Would you eat them? And his friend Mia, who now goes by the name Asher, was an environmental studies major. And they reply, sponges, but how would we farm them? Because if we harvested them, we would deplete them pretty quickly. The conversation meanders, and then our daughter Hillary, who was a philosophy major. This is the last mention of philosophy, I promise. She was a philosophy major. She asks, do you believe we bring something into being when we name it? Do we give it objective reality? This is after a few glasses of Shabbos wine. Her friend Alex was a sociology major and also the founder of a nonprofit organization promoting safe drug use. He replies, do you think there really is an objective reality? And if there were, would it be socially constructed? Maybe by our language? And what about weird, culturally contradictory statements like, I'm an atheist, but I believe in a higher power? Or, Hillary adds, the statement, I feel an energy flowing through the universe, but I'm not religious. And then Hillary and Alex collapse into wild giggles. Hillary is Jewish, and Alex is a Greek Orthodox Christian. And they both know that higher power and energy of the universe are two very old names for God. Even though some of their friends use those words, higher power and energy of the universe, to say, I accept a personal spirituality, but I reject the old cultural forms that have been used to shape it, to contain it, to exploit it. Millennials like these four young adults will lead our Canadian Jewish community for the next 50 years until they retire from volunteer life. You know how volunteering goes, maybe at about the age of 80. God willing, long and healthy lives. How would they like to see Jewish community grow? I'll weave all their perspectives into one idealistic character named Ariel, a nice gender-neutral Hebrew name. Ariel is comfortable with gender fluidity, self-definition, LGBTQ relationships. Ariel refers to God as she and he and they without skipping a beat. When Ariel speaks Hebrew, they find ways around the gendered language. So, for example, the summer camp Ariel directs does not call boy campers chanichim, does not call girl campers chanichot. Instead, every camper is among the chanichimot. People are trying. Ariel's synagogue, future synagogue, redefines Jewish identity in a gender-neutral way. There's no more talk of patrilineal descent or matrilineal descent. Instead, they say people are Jewish if they convert or if they have at least one Jewish parent. Ariel's synagogue welcomes multi-faith families. Synagogue programs, policies, life cycle events all make space for multi-faith families to celebrate, to grieve, to learn together. Remember, Ariel is an imaginary person. Ariel recognizes that people of all faiths share life's existential challenges. So Ariel is interested in learning how other spiritual traditions address those challenges. Ariel's synagogue has an ongoing relationship with other spiritual communities, and they invite each other to join Seder and Eid and Christmas and Durga Puja celebrations year after year. Ariel knows how to speak with Jews who are spiritual but not religious. Ariel uses the psycho-spiritual language of Kabbalah to speak of divine energy moving through us. Ariel speaks about a respect for the natural world, expressed in the agricultural holidays of Tu B'Shvat, Shavuot, Sukkot. Ariel practices eco-kashrut, keeping kosher by eating a vegetarian diet. Ariel is like some kind of superhero, right? Ariel is attuned to heartbreaking social issues like the opioid epidemic that has claimed so many young adults. Ariel works with members of other faith communities to provide addiction support services and to lobby for healthcare policy changes. And before October 7th, Ariel was ready to leap into action and lead the Jewish community to all of these goals. But now, Ariel, who is obviously a time traveler between the future and the present, but now Ariel is in shock. Ariel has never experienced anti-Semitism before. Right? The older generation has done a wonderful job of shielding them and creating safe conditions. No one ever denied Ariel service in a restaurant or refused to read Ariel's academic work simply because Ariel is Jewish, just drawing on the list of things that I have experienced. And now, Ariel finds that public discourse is full of anti-Semitic language. And Ariel cannot escape it by hanging out with right-wing or left-wing or centrist friends. Why? Because it is a cultural issue. For example, sacred texts in Christianity and Islam do contain some very old negative stereotypes of Jews. And there simply are not enough Jews on the planet to do the thread-by-thread work of creating relationships that overcome the stereotypes. There are not that many of us relative to the world's population. So to many people, we are an exotic and mysterious other. And we all know how this works. People with political ambitions easily paint us as a shadowy enemy responsible for all social problems. And suddenly, some of the interfaith bridges that Ariel, the superhero of all things ethical and progressive, suddenly some of the interfaith bridges that Ariel built are cracking. Ariel supports Israel-based peace movements where Jews and Palestinians work together. Ariel has read the new Israeli historians whose works are based on recently declassified military and government documents about the events of 1948 and 1949. So Ariel knows that the founding of the State of Israel was more complex and more violent than Ariel's own parents knew. So Ariel understands why some of their peers choose to be anti-Zionist or at least very, very pro-diaspora. But Ariel wishes these differences did not strain relationships and cause the Jewish community to crack. Ariel now realizes that all the fault lines in North American life also run through Jewish life. All these things that seem so natural to Ariel, gender egalitarianism, eco-kashrut, tikkun olam, support for multi-faith Jewish families. To Ariel's Orthodox Israeli cousins, these trends are all foreign to Judaism and should be approached with great caution. How will the future leader, Ariel, help hold Jewish community together? This is a question. Will Ariel encourage new but uneasily coexisting synagogues and chavarot based on diverse philosophies of Judaism? That is one way to make room for everyone. Will Ariel turn away from dealing with the hard stuff and focus on tikkun olam projects that everyone can agree on? Like addressing the opioid epidemic? Will Ariel leap into the challenges and initiate dialogue sessions within Jewish community? Maybe compassionate listening or intergenerational truth and reconciliation discussions around Israel, Palestine, and other challenging issues in the Jewish community? Whatever the mythical composite Ariel chooses, I hope that they will remember two things. Number one, Shabbat is a taste of the world to come, a taste of the Garden of Eden, of a different consciousness. And maybe it's a time when people can be together without judgment, sharing food with those who think and feel differently. And number two, a key lesson 2 generations after the Holocaust. As a people, we are incredibly resilient. And as our son Eli likes to say, and says often, quote, "They've been predicting we would disappear from intermarriage, assimilation, and apathy since the time of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. But guess what? We are still here." These are just some opportunities and some challenges, and we'll be discussing specifics later. Shabbat Shalom.
Right now, we're going to continue this part of the program. And I was thinking about it. Let's take any 50-year segment, right? We could subtract 50 years. So about 1970, when I was a little pup, what did I think Judaism would look like? I probably didn't have many thoughts, but by the time I was ordained in 1984, the question was, what? Will your grandchildren be Jewish? That was all over the Jewish press. And right about that time, Rabbi Alexander Schindler announced patrilineal descent was acceptable in Reform Judaism, and that was a big revelation, and they thought, okay, that is going to split Judaism because half the Jewish population are going to accept Jewish parents by the father, and half the Jewish population won't. And so far, we have not split. So it's really hard to predict the future. But I was hoping you were going to give us some stock tips, but you didn't. Okay, so you could take any 50-year slice. So think about it. You talked a lot about some of the emerging issues, the LGBT and the transgender and the focus on climate and all of these things which are very current, overlaid with what happened on October 7th. So let's, if you will, take a little deeper dive. Do you think October 7th is going to be the seminal event that's going to reverberate for decades? Do you think the concern that we have that you mentioned about the environment and transgender and LGBT, do you think all of that is going to just reverberate through the decades? These are now seminal changes in our society?
I think you've just turned that first question into about 6 questions all at the same time. I do think that in the relationship between Israel and the Jewish world, October 7th will absolutely be a seminal event that reverberates for decades. If October 7th itself happened and no continuing war, it would still be an event that reverberated for decades. And I think because the Jewish world is so small, most people either lost someone or is connected to someone who lost someone. And so people take very personally the unfolding of events since then, wherever we stand on our on the spectrum. So yes, I think that will reverberate. I think it has led to so many months now of discussions about how people feel about Israel. And one of the results of that has been scholars turning more attention to what have been the contributions of Jewish centers in the diaspora. And I think we're going to see over years more centers of Jewish life emerge in the diaspora. Let me just pause there. So I think that the effects will reverberate in our relationship with Israel. We'll be doing a lot more education and communication about what we know and don't know. Right? Peaceniks will be creating many more multicultural linkages. And we'll celebrate also what we have here in relative safety.
Yeah. Well, October 7th. So go back in time, almost 50 years, we had the Six-Day War, right? And then there was this whole vibrancy in Israel of the Israeli Sabra. Israel seemed invincible. And then a few years later, we had the Yom Kippur War. So one kind of masked the accomplishments of the other and became sobering. So now we have October 7th. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years, but we know what's happening now. But we don't know the reverberations. I think that, Jews have this, I don't want to belittle it, it's almost like Holocaust syndrome, and that seems to belittle it, because it's that oi that throughout our history, people have been trying to kill us. And nevertheless, we have survived. And of course, we can look back to the Holocaust. So every time there is this act of anti-Semitism, that is our go-to comparison. But is it a fair comparison? And if it isn't, do you think it's still going to happen in such a way that within Israeli society, it's going to affect the way they view themselves for decades to come? No longer an invincible people.
Again, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. See, I told you I was going to take it easy on you.
The first question, do I think that comparisons or connections between the Holocaust and October 7th are, did you say justified, fair?
No, I don't know. We always say it's the worst mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust. So right there in that statement, of course, there's the comparison, right?
I think that I would give different answers emotionally and intellectually. Emotionally, of course, it's a fair comparison, because the way that trauma works is it hides in your psyche and it stays in your body, and when it is triggered again, everything comes rushing back. And we know that that also transmits across generations in very complex ways. So emotionally, it's quite understandable. Intellectually, of course, it's not the same situation, right? We're not scattered and relatively powerless. We're not at the end of 10 years of anti-Jewish legislation. It's just a very, very different situation if you're analytical about it.
People ask me, and I say, it's not 1933. It's not 1939. It's different. But yet the feeling and when we read about anti-Semitism and how it has risen and risen, you can't turn on the news. You look at college campuses, and you have been a part of college campuses. Has this been going on in Canada too, these demonstrations, as they've been going on in America?
Yes, but not with the same intensity.
Yeah.
Can I go back to the Israel question, and then I'll come back to the college question? I do not think that the effect on Israelis is that they feel powerless. And all of you have connections in Israel, and you've all had conversations with people, and maybe you drew similar conclusions to me. The effect is more that they are angry, and all of the fault lines and rifts that are underground in Israeli society are now shaking and causing reverberations. And people are splitting, many are demonstrating against the government. There are all different kinds of movements now for economic justice and environmental justice, for different kinds of political systems, and all of that is coming forward at the same time in a chaotic way.
College campus. Did you want to throw that one in there?
I'll throw that one in there, but first I want to say that with the news of the last few days that 2 major protests were broken up without anyone being killed, I feel an overwhelming sense of relief. Right? This is not my story to tell, this is Charles's story to tell, but Charles lost a friend at Kent State in 1969. And we have really been sitting on the edge of our seats, hoping that whatever the resolution is, it doesn't result in another tragedy here. So on college campuses, I think what's happening on college campuses is so complex, and I just need to make full disclosure that I've been on sabbatical from my school this term, so I have not been so involved in what's happening on campus, but I think it's very, very complex. I think that students in the United States are angry and frightened about so many things. They're angry and frightened about the political divisions in the United States. They're angry and frightened about whether they're going to get jobs, what will be their economic futures, especially the students at the most expensive universities who have, mortgaged their lives exactly on their parents' lives to pay for it. They're anxious about world events. Will the United States manage to get itself into another war, and will some of them be called to serve? There's so much that they are worried about. And when somebody presents an issue and they say, this is a justice issue, this is an economic issue, this is a political issue, many people who did not know much about Palestine and Israel before are ready to come out and, on the emotional level, protest everything. And I think that's some of what has happened. I also think the protests have been very chaotic. There have been students, there have been non-students, there have been amateur organizers, there have been professional organizers, there have been people who are genuinely sympathetic to Palestinians, there have been Jews who define themselves as both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, and all of this has been mixed up in a volatile, I'll put it that way, emotional mix. Not to mention it's the end of term when everybody is at the highest stress level on campus. And when you have a chaotic mix like that, it becomes even really hard to hear what are the legitimate complaints and demands. And even when university officials are willing to talk about specific demands, when the crowd is overwrought, it's too hard to do that. Those are some of my views.
No one's willing to listen yet. Yeah. We're going to switch it a little bit. COVID. Who could have predicted COVID? Well, there were a couple movies that were out there, right, that kind of predicted these viruses that would eventually impact the world. And then we had COVID that did. And I remember in March, what was it, March 2020, Kenter, was that it? And then it was Purim, and we thought, okay, we had our Purim carnival, and the kids did such a great job at the Purim spiel, we were going to do a reprise. And then a couple days went by, and we go, well, maybe we need to cancel religious school, and before you know it, we ended up shuttering the synagogue, right? Shuttering the businesses. There's going to be books written about whether that was an overreaction or who knows what, and vaccines, but the point I wanted to make was that is when the whole notion for us of web streaming, we have that camera up there, and that became a permanent fixture to our congregation and to communities probably throughout the world. And Gard, I've taught your class many times by Zoom. Maybe one day I'll actually meet a student. You do have students, right? They're not virtual. They're real. Okay. So the world has changed. How do you think technology is going to continue to impact Judaism? It makes me fearful because in the old days, when people had a Jewish question, they would go ask the rabbi, and it was an introduction so that you could build a relationship. Now they just ask Rabbi Google, and you don't get the opportunity to be in relationship. And I don't know and now we have AI. So if they want to hear a sermon, they'll go, give me a rabbi sermon for Parshat Chukat, boom, boom, boom. Oh, sounded good. I got my fill. Do you think it's going to be that bad, or do you think that people, please God, are going to want to be with real people and human beings, or a mixture of the two? What's your prediction?
Well, I love this question because all the other questions have put me in a position of talking about things that are bad. This gives me the chance to talk about things that are good. Of course, there are going to be people and there are going to be situations where we want to know embodied people in person without a doubt. But I also think that online presence and online technology makes possible all kinds of creativity and all kinds of opportunities. If you think about, for example, music and other arts, right? There is so much on Jewish YouTube. We can now learn Jewish musical styles as they're played around the world, right? The cantor can tell the congregation, we're going to sing this next Friday night, and here's the link. So everybody take a listen, and it's going to sound really good when we sing together. There are times when we might need to be in community to perhaps say Kaddish, and we can't make it physically. Either we're not close to a synagogue, or the weather is terrible, or we're not feeling well. And imagine logging into a Zoom service. There are still many ongoing minyan gatherings online. Imagine being able to log in and to be with 10 other people who showed up simply to support you in this minyan. Think about people who live so far away from any Jewish community. There are all kinds of Jewish communities now that exist in virtual space, and people support one another, and it's an amazing thing.
I remember going to a Torah study with a congregation in South Africa. It was amazing, One of the things I did during my sabbatical, just to kind of reach out and explore. Whoever's listening, I thought they should have a channel where you could tune into it, and you could tune into any synagogue you wanted just by this channel and go, I want to be in South Carolina today. Boom. I want to be, in Central Synagogue. Boom. It's a simple idea. Maybe someone will manifest it. I want to do Torah study in Toronto. Boom. And it's all there. I predict it'll happen.
I'm just laughing because
Is someone working on that?
We have put one laptop in the dining room table and one on the kitchen counter, and been in 2 services at once.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last one is to give a little commercial, if you will, for what you're doing tomorrow, and talk about the power of interfaith as it impacts Judaism and really the view of world religion in the decades to come. You're part of the 3 amigos, and Gard, thank you for bringing them in, and Imam Jamal, thank you for being here. And who's the third? Who's the Christian representative? Where's Don from?
He is joining us virtually.
Tomorrow he's joining us virtually? Okay. He's a Holy Spirit? Is that it? 80 years old. Okay.
That and en route home from Florida.
En route home. All right. Well, talk a little bit about your work and how you project the power of interfaith and multi-faith in the years to come. And then we'll call it a night.
On a political level and an ethical level and a community building level, interfaith is really important. People are already pre-gathered in religious and spiritual communities, and I know some people say the numbers of religious and spiritual communities are declining, but there's still fully 1/3 of the population, and that's a lot of them. So if you are looking to link up with another community organization to do a project, to improve your neighborhood, to improve your city, you have a ready-made committee of other people who are excited to make a difference. That's one level. Another level is the level of learning about what it is to be a person of faith, and I don't know if that's the right language, that's the language we use in Canada. What it is to be a person of faith, but formed in a different culture with different resources, different rituals, a different kind of spiritual language. To come together and affirm that we both share similar life journeys, and we also have a shared sense of that higher power or energy that runs through the universe. Yet we've all developed such different ways of connecting with it. Different musics, different chants, different meditations, different prayers. Imagine how enriched we can be in our own inner lives and communal lives by broadening that perspective. Doesn't mean we have to enact and bring into our synagogue absolutely everything we learn from another tradition, but we would find ourselves enriched by that learning. And I think we're going to be doing both of those things tomorrow, talking about making linkages and also exploring spiritual practices. And this is at the Interfaith Contemplative Center. Is that right, Gard?
Which is where, Gard?
4770 Harrison.
4770 Harrison,
Yes.
which is cross streets roughly.
Tropicana and Harrison.
Tropicana and Harrison. Do they have to RSVP because it's tomorrow? It's between 9, when is it tomorrow? Between 9 and 4?
9 and 3.
9 and 3. So you can they drop in, or are they supposed to? Anytime, 9 and 3. Lunch is, so drop in from 12 to 1, okay? All right, Rabbi, thank you so much. Let's hear a little, there we go. All right, Cantor, you want to sing us out? Thank you so much. It was beautiful. Thank you.